Get ready for Sonia, Teresa, Vanessa, Bettina. Come on. Say what? Come on. Say what? We got bam, hot topics. We got what the fudge. So bring it home. Say what? Bring it home. Say what? You got questions. We got the answers. You wanna chit? You wanna chat? You wanna talk about this and talk about that? You're in the right place to hear the facts. Bring it home. Say what? Bring it on. Say what? The ladies are bringing the conversation. So join us or say what across the nation. Bring it on, y'all. Say what? Come on. Say what? Bring it on. Say what? Come on. Say what? Bring it on. Say what? Come on. Say what? Bring it on, y'all. Say what? Come on. Say what? Bring it on. Say.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. My goodness, today has been a battle, but welcome to the Say What podcast. We were having some technical difficulties earlier, but that's all right. This is the beauty of technology. We can come back at it when we get ready. That's so right. Since we are doing that, we're giving another hour because this was such an important show that we wanted to make sure that we got a chance to talk to everybody that's out there. So welcome. Come on in to our conversation. We are talking today about Trailblazing Women. It is Women's International History Month. And since we all women on this call, we celebrating everybody on this call. How about that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So we are so happy to have you with us today. We're going to jump right into it. We got the junior bishop, and she is going to bring the word today. Miss Junior Bishop, what's going on?
Yes. As my title explains, I am the junior bishop, not to be mistaken for the bishop. I will, because of our technical difficulties and all of the different things that happen, listen, God is able and we are prepared. So we are not shaken. We are not moved. We are going to keep it pushing. And our scripture today is Proverbs 31:30. And favor, and I'm doing the King James Version, favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. And I tell you, I felt that scripture was so relevant right now. And I felt that when it came up for me, that's the first thing that came up when I thought about the scripture was the fact that this is Women's History Month. And we're here and we are strong women. We're powerful women. And the most important thing about us as women that I know about the women that are on this show is we are women of God. Okay. And that's the thing that's important in it. And it doesn't mean when that Proverbs 31:30 woman is black, white, Native American, whatever she is, if that's who she chooses to be. And so I'm celebrating all of our Proverbs 31:30 women, just like, for example, the woman that we interviewed and will be on here today that will show the interview today, Miss Barbara Cross. So I am thankful. And that is what saith the Lord. My lips weren't working.
That was all that beauty wrapped up in there. It kind of got tangled up a little bit. It's right. All good. It's all good. It's all good. So we are happy to be here today. And again, coming from what Bettina said, we are all women of God. We celebrate God. I know a lot of times people don't always think, because they always think when the Bible, they think male, because it always says male, whatever. But I will draw everybody's attention to Genesis 1:26. He said he created male and female. So let's be clear that God celebrates us. So we are happy to be here today. So Miss Vanessa, what is going on in the world?
What isn't going on in the world is the better question.
Yes.
So, about 17 million plus people watched the Oprah interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And again, I think it's safe to say that, the ladies on this podcast watched it. I know I was one of them. So they dropped a lot of bombshells on that interview. A lot. Oprah is like the master interviewist. If that's a word, interviewist. She is a master at interviewing. And she was able to get a lot of tea from both Meghan and Prince Harry. And one being, they talked about Meghan's mental health. How she felt like her mental stability was in jeopardy because she wasn't allowed at one point. She had been in the house, I think she said 4 months, because of an issue that was going on in the tabloids, and she wasn't able to go out. She had only been outside like two days out of 4 months, and they were still telling her, don't say anything, just maintain, whatever. And her mental health was at stake. And when she went to the institution, or the firm, as she called it, they told her, she went to them for help. She told them, she felt she needed help, and they told her she wasn't on payroll, so they couldn't help her, which I just think is the craziest thing. One of the other bombshells she dropped was that there was a conversation that was had with Prince Harry and someone else in the institution who will remain nameless. He refused to name, but he said that they had a conversation with him on what the color of the baby, their eldest child, would look, Archie, what he would look like. And that kind of struck a chord across the globe, actually. It just so happened the day of the interview, they were also celebrating. It was a holiday for them where they were celebrating. I think it was Colonial Day or Colonist Day or something. They were celebrating that day. But anyway, that was a question, or that was a statement that was heard around the world. And the Queen had come out with a statement stating that, they were saddened by all the things that they learned throughout the interview, and specifically with the racism that Meghan and Harry encountered, and that it would be handled privately as a family. But Prince William decided, he was going to go against protocol, and he answered a couple of shout out questions a reporter had yelled. One being, was the royal family racist? And he said, no, the royal family was not racist. And they also asked if he had spoken to Prince Harry, and he said, no, he had not, but they will. So I just thought, all of that's just a lot to take in. What are your thoughts on this?
Bettina, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you say you let me go first. Like, I'm full of a whole lot of stuff to say.
Just go on.
I'm just trying to be Junior Bishop like. I don't want to say no whole lot. Anyway, I do have quite a bit to say, and I'm gonna minimize it to. I think most of what we heard, I think most people suspected, and it's not our business to make assumptions. It really isn't. I think people suspected it anyway, not just here in the United States, but across the pond. And when it was spoken that the question was asked about the color of their children before they even got married. When they said, what will your children look like? Oh, there go the bishop. Ain't nothing like the bishop.
There she go.
The bishop flew in. Look, she slid in on her. She said, that's how bishops do.
Yeah, that's all right. Whenever the bishop is late, she's been talking to Jesus. It's all right. It's all
Hallelujah.
right.
That's the truth today.
And so when I think about them asking the question about what color the children would be, that had to be an indication for Harry, even if Harry didn't relay it to Meghan, and I don't know that he didn't, but it had to be an indication that this was going to be a bumpy ride.
Exactly.
This was absolutely going to be a bumpy ride. And I just think that for him, he made a decision a really long time ago as a young man, even after his mother passed, that, you guys are not going to kill me. You're not going to drive. I'm going to be my own man. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to show my butt in Vegas. It don't matter. Like literally show my butt in Vegas. Cause there's a picture of his butt out there. And so he just decided you don't get to do that. And I think Prince William decided I'm going to be buttoned down and I'm going to take that, lead. And so Harry said, listen, I'm the baby brother. Y'all do what you do, and I'm going to go to Vegas. How about that? And the other thing that stood out for me as well is the fact that she asked for mental health counseling. And those young men did an interview talking about mental health and being on a platform about that. To me, that was so, if she asked and didn't get help, was so hypocritical. after they did the interview. That jumped out for me, and it breaks my heart because, you know, with Talisa and I, we're both, you know, therapists, and I'm a trauma therapist. So when I think of that, it does me in.
Absolutely. And I agree with your point. I love the idea about Harry stepping up and leading his family, you know, and that's where I think the trouble comes in. And Vanessa and I have talked about this quite often. I honestly believe that some other members of the family are living vicariously through him.
Absolutely.
You know, he has the opportunity to stand up, and they, when they had the opportunity, did not. So sometimes that brings a bit of envy, and, you know, people are kind of looking at him like, well, how dare you do something like this? But I think that he waited for a Meghan to help give him that green light to say it's okay to do.
Absolutely.
Because nowhere where he would go, he could get money just drawn in just being Prince Harry.
Right.
You know, I do empathize with him, though, at the same time, in regards to his relationship with his grandmother. You could tell that is very important to him, and he doesn't want to jeopardize it. But at the same time, you know, being in a place that he has to make a decision for his family is kind of where he is. And I love what he said at the end. He said, "We have each other. My mother didn't have anybody."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that stood out beyond. And when Meghan said there's a difference between being rude and racist, I mean, drop the mic. So again, it just shows that they took the leap of faith, so to speak, and said that we're going to go and we're going to do what we have to do for our family, and everybody else just has to understand. Sonia, what are your thoughts? I know you're kind of coming in a little late.
Yes, I just want to add from another perspective is that it's just an opportunity for the unknown to be exposed. And there are, people have put the royals on this pedestal, or thought that they were, you know, especially in Europe, that they were these perfect people, or even that they had control, that we're now finding out they really don't have a lot of control. It's the firm or the institution. So we're learning a lot about that as well. So at the end of the day, I just feel like things that need to be exposed, truths are coming out, and I feel like that's a good thing. And unfortunately, it had to happen this way. But I applaud Meghan's courage. I applaud Prince Harry's courage to take that step, because to me, that's a real man. When your man can walk away from his family,
Girl,
his country,
preach,
mind you, his country, and he can relinquish everything. I mean, this man has money. He can relinquish all of that for the love of his wife. He took his vows very seriously. So I applaud him as a man for recognizing the importance of protecting his family, for protecting his wife. And what really touched my heart, one of the things that he said is he never really realized what she or what people of color have to go through until he was able to live it through her eyes, walk this journey with her. So that just really touched my heart, and it gave him a totally different perspective on how he viewed the way his family think, or what his family taught him to believe about race relations.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry, Vanessa. It took the bishop to come in and bring that element. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we just miss a little element. It took the bishop to swing in and bring that, because I think, you know, and I could be completely wrong, I think Prince Harry got a preview of coming to America, and he decided, nah, I'm about to relinquish all this. Okay. And because if Eddie Murphy, look, if Akeem can do it, I believe I can go ahead and make this happen.
Exactly. I agree. And, you know, on the same vein, there has been a lot of talk, even on the talk shows. Piers Morgan was on Good Morning Britain, and he, you know, there was a serious conversation around the table in regards to Meghan and, you know, things that had occurred. And he pretty much has no love for Meghan. And I still say he's a jilted wannabe lover, because he put her in that taxi years ago after they had drinks and had gone out that one time, and then she left him and drove over down the street across the way and met Prince Harry, and the rest is history. So he sounds like a jilted wannabe lover. He's mad. And I say she dodged the bullet, because this behavior to me would be a preview of what she would have probably encountered had they gotten together. And who knows what would have happened if they had married. That's controlling. You don't know how to deal with change, or you don't know how to deal with the rejection. That speaks volumes.
It does.
And for him to even put it out there, again, I'm looking at you side-eyed, because you're a man and you're putting it out there that you're jilted and you're mad and this is your behavior. You'll never like her because she didn't want to talk to you. Oh, right. No.
And I said before, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, but hell hath no fury like a man scorned, and not just a man scorned. I'm saying like a British man scorned, because that joker stomped off and threw a temper tantrum. I have not seen a full-grown man.
Me either.
He might be cousin of Simon Cowell. I don't know. Kind of the way he did that thing may put me in mindset of old Simon over there. So.
That's very true, Fatina. I hadn't even thought of that. He could definitely be kin to him. Absolutely. It was to the
point where he walked off the set, and after 41,000 calls, letters, emails, and whatnot, he's no longer on Good Morning Britain, because he refused to apologize. They wrote in. I guess they were unhappy with him walking off, and they probably said, "Boy, bye," and he's gone.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. And then lastly on the talk, Sharon Osbourne and Cheryl Underwood, they had an interesting conversation. Sharon Osbourne is friends with Piers Morgan, and she supported his his behavior, his things he was saying. She supported him, and she and Cheryl had they had an interesting conversation about what's racist and what isn't. Let me ask you ladies a question, since you have children. If I came to you, you're pregnant, 6-7 months pregnant, and I came to you and say, what color you think your baby's gonna be? Would that offend you?
That actually happened in my family. A cousin expecting a baby was very, very concerned that her baby may come out dark. Now, this cousin is fair skinned. The dad is fair skinned, but we have all shades in our family, and so because one of her husband's siblings are a little darker, well, a couple of them are a little darker than him, she made that comment, and we prayed that baby was going to be black as smut, but it didn't work out that way. So she could get over herself.
You know what, Sonia? That's a different show altogether.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
And Sonia, you just helped me figure something out. My grandfather used to say that he is dark as smut. We was like as kids, what is that? Where do you get that from? So thank you, Sonia, for now defining that.
I went way back with that one, huh?
I just found it interesting. Pierce didn't find it racist for someone to be asking Meghan or Harry even, what color do you think the child's going to be? I would think if it's a non-person of color asking someone of color, to me, depending on who you ask, you might get either cursed out or even get hands put on you, because that's crossing the line. That's a cross on the line in my opinion.
Well,
but again, I think if you're going to ask somebody that, really, while you're pregnant and you're trying to figure out, what's going on and all of that, we need to know that. The first word out of my mouth is, why is that important? But again, that's people feel like they can ask. It's like it goes on the lines of what I was taught when I was a kid. You never ask a woman how old she is. You don't, and certain things you just don't say. So again, it needs to be examined. And to the Piers Morgan point, if somebody asks something in his opinion that's rude about the Queen, he's going to be upset. So why can't Meghan be upset? I don't understand how you're going to tell me that, they should be able to have that discussion. Again, Piers, you are not black. You don't get to tell me when I should be offended, period.
Try Jesus. Please don't try me.
Did they ask? My thing, don't ask Meghan if you didn't ask Kate.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Somebody else.
Did you ask her what color her dark or light her baby gonna be? Who gonna
Oh
have
my
blonde
goodness.
hair? Who gonna have dark hair? I mean, come on now.
Listen, people, I think it might be time for us to get close to the interview because the bishop done start rolling her neck. And so anytime that happens, I'm gonna say, listen, I'm gonna say happy birthday to everybody in the month of March, to include my son Trey, who turned 14 last Saturday. My cousin Yolanda's birthday is today, and my nephew Clifton, and anybody else, his birthday is the 31st, and anybody else who may have a birthday in March. We want to send out some love, hugs, and kisses to you. Be safe out there and enjoy your celebration responsibly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Bettina, for that. So we had a discussion, a beautiful discussion with Barbara Cross, who is the daughter of Reverend Cross, who was actually the Reverend of 16th Street Baptist at the time the 4 young girls were murdered. There was a bomb, for those that do not know, that rang throughout Birmingham Sunday morning as people were heading on their way to church. And it was in the basement of the church during Sunday school time. And it rang out. And of course, blew up everything at that point, not just what was going on in the church, but just took it to a whole nother level. So Miss Barbara Cross was actually the she was the daughter of the pastor, but at the same time, she was a friend to these girls who were murdered. So we want to let you in on our conversation with Miss Barbara Cross, and we'll see you afterwards.
Morning. We are so blessed to have Miss Barbara Cross with us today. Miss Cross is the daughter of the Reverend John Cross. He was the pastor of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, during the time of the bombings that killed 4 little girls. And I always like to say their names. The 4 little girls who were killed were Miss Addie Mae Collins at the age of 14, Miss Carol Denise McNair at the age of 11, Miss Carol Rosanne Robertson at the age of 14, and Miss Cynthia Dion Wesley, who was also 14. Miss Cross were friends. She was friends with these young ladies, and we are so thankful and blessed to have her here today to tell us her experiences and just give us more insight to her stories on the things that happened that day. Miss Cross, welcome. Thank you for joining us here at Say What Podcast.
Thank you. I am honored. This is my first podcast I've been on.
It is.
Yay! Usually I do Zoom and with my other Toastmasters groups and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cross. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your service, your dedication, your love for the community, and just helping us overall. So we just thank you so much. So I want to get started with the first question and ask you, one, about the spirit of people during that time. This was such a chaotic time and so hard. And for someone, I'm a 60s baby. I think all of us on here are 60s babies, but we were small. You're a 50s baby. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, but we weren't part of that era, and we hear so much about it. So the first question I have for you is, can you tell us about the spirit of people during that time? It was so hard with the opposition. How did the people continue on in the midst of beatings and bombings and all sorts of things?
Okay, I'm going to take you back to the actual date of September the 15th, I'm going to take you back to 1962. My father, the late Reverend John H. Cross, was altar pastor of the 16th Street Baptist Church. 16th Street Baptist Church was one of the churches that he allowed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to use to be a part of the peaceful protest movement. So back then, people were marching in the street with their signs, and the policemen, which were mostly white, and most of them were racist, they would use those nightsticks and use on the demonstrators. Then they would put the fire hose on the demonstrators and wash them up. And a lot of times there were children marching because most of the adults were afraid to lose their jobs if they were seen on camera. So on that day, And like I said, my dad allowed Dr. King to use the church. But I'm gonna take you to the most dreadful day, and I still I cry. That day, my father was supposed to be a youth Sunday where the youth were supposed to be ushering at church. We had the youth, they always played in the orchestra. Also, that day, it was just a beautiful Sunday morning. So all of the youth were in the basement of the church and we were studying our Sunday school lesson. So the Sunday school lesson was a love that forgives. So we were talking about if somebody does something to you in school, instead of fight back, you will use techniques to be peaceful. After the Sunday school lesson, that's when I heard a boom. It was the loudest noise I had ever heard in my life. But back then, we were reading about the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the missiles were pointed to the United States. So in my finite mind, I thought we were being attacked by the Cuban Missile Crisis. But my dad, who was upstairs, all of the adults were upstairs in the choir loft. That's where they had that Sunday school lesson. But when my dad said he started smelling the fumes and he knew they had bomb threats, he said, oh my God, I need to clear the building. So he tried to go downstairs, but the steps were blown away. So then he had to come around to the front of the building and go on the side, and someone told him there was a hole big enough that you could drive a Hummer Jeep through. He said, oh my God, I hope there are no kids under that rubble. And they had the civil defense workers working, and they were Blacks. And they said, Reverend Cross, when they started digging and digging, they said like those girls were blown together. Some of the parents couldn't identify the kids to their self because one of them were decapitated. And Mr. Pippin, who had a cleaners across the street from the church, he ran over to the church. He said, oh my God. He looked under one of the sheets and he said, that's my grandbaby. He said, that's the niece. So the niece, McNair, was 11. She was the youngest victim. Carol Robertson was 14. Cynthia Wesley was 14. And there was one survivor under that rubble. And she is living today. So that is the sister of Adam A. Collins. Her name is Sarah Collins Rudolph now. And she has written a book called The Fifth Little Girls. She was hospitalized the longest. They tried to save her one of her eyes, so she has an artificial eye. So she wrote a book called The Fifth Little Girl. Now, because of the devastation at the church, there was a church that was built on the same architecture style as 16th Street, and that was 6th Avenue Baptist Church, and Reverend John Porter was pastor there. So they allowed us to have 3 of the funerals together. One of the parents said she couldn't take 4 caskets in a church, so she had Carol Robertson's service at one of the AME churches. I think it was St. Paul or St. John AME. So her funeral was separate. I remember when I went to the funeral where the 3 girls were, the 3 of the girls' service that was together, my father helped to officiate, but Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to do the eulogy. So he did the eulogy for 3 of the girls. There were reporters who were climbing poles, trying to get pictures as they were bringing the 3 caskets out of the church. I was stuck. I couldn't be on the same floor where my dad was because most of the family, 3 of the families were on that floor. So I was in the balcony of the church looking down. And I like to think that my 4 little friends that did not die in vain, because after their deaths, the Civil Rights Bill was passed. I think sometimes through tragedy, there can be God can send a rim to calm people. And like when I think about how Mrs. McNair had another daughter born about a year after Denise's death, and Mr. McNair, he was a photographer. Now he had a story that he published of Denise holding her white doll, and it was said, "Death of an Innocent."
Mm.
I got a chance to be interviewed by Spike Lee, and he did a documentary, and I was in his documentary called Four Little Girls. And I was on the Oprah Winfrey show, but her show just wasn't about the bomb, and it was just about other tragedies that happened in Alabama. So I like to think that, you know, and as I'm a retired I used to be work for the DeKalb County school systems, and so when I speak to students about my history, they said, "Ms. Cross, do you hate the person that bombed your church?" And I tell them just like this: I was not taught to hate. I can separate the hate from what they did from hating the person. And also at 16th Street Baptist Church, if you visit the church now, they have, I used to do tours through the Evelyn Gibson Lowry, that's the Dr. Lowry, Joseph Lowry's wife, and Mrs. Lowry, who are both deceased. We did tours to Selma, and we would go over in fact, in March of 2019, I remember going over the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis and other demonstrators who were marching for freedom. And they do that. So this was 2021 was the first year we had not gone there. But I was exposed to a lot of things. Now, I didn't tell you about this. Did I tell you about the statues across the street from the church?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay. They erected monument to the girls. I don't know who did the monuments, but there's a bench that they are supposed to be sitting on, which they did, whoever created that monument. One girl who is Carol Robinson was pointing for the girls to come on to, you know, get ready to come to church. And the youngest victim, someone is tying the sash on the back of her dress. And then there are four doves like descending into space, which represent each of the four girls. And so if you ever visit the church, and there's a stained glass window, did I tell you about that one yet?
No, ma'am.
It was given by the people of Wales, England, because on the day of the bombing, the head of Christ was blown out that window. Wow. So what people of Wales, England did, and somebody interviewed me in my home here, and they said that one hand was supposed to be beautiful stained glass window given by the people of Wales, England. One is supposed to be like a black man suffering on a cross, and one hand is holding out like, "Halt, stop the violence, stop the killing." And the other hand is supposed to be reaching out in love. And it says at the bottom, it has a plaque at the bottom of the window in the balcony. And it has the name of all four girls: Carol Robinson, Cynthia Wesley, Denise McNair, and Cynthia Wesley. And like I said, three of the girls were 14 and the youngest victim was 11. Now this is interesting. When Mrs. McNair came back to her class, I didn't tell you about that yet, did I?
No, ma'am.
My teacher sent me to her classroom, and I was in elementary school. I probably was I had to be 13, because that was after the bombing. She had a manila envelope, and in there was my wallet. They thought it was Denise's wallet. So kids, and she gave it to me, and she said they found it in the bathroom. Somebody found it in the bathroom, they gave it to her. She said, "No, that's Reverend Cross's daughter's wallet." So kids today said, "Miss Cross, do you still have that wallet?" I said, "I wish I did." But when I found out, she handed me that wallet, it was so precious to me. And so after time, since I was 13 at that time, when you move and our family left Virginia, we moved to Birmingham. So, I like to think that, like I said, they didn't die in vain. And I like to think that they went quickly, they didn't suffer.
Absolutely. That is an amazing story, Miss
Amen.
Cross. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you can still see that your heart is there, because as you begin to tell the
Yes.
story, it all comes back. So I can only imagine as a small child what that was like for you. So the next question I wanted to ask you is, how did this change the life of your family? How did your family move forward, in specific, your parents?
My dad, when he did different interviews, he blamed himself for the bombing. And when I heard him sit down and do that interview with someone, I said, no, Dad, you were courageous.
Mhm.
Because if it wasn't you, somebody else would have let them use the church. I said, but you were loving. You knew that Dr. King was trying to make a difference. So you allowed him to use the church. It affected me. I remember once my sister fell out of bed. I shot out the house like a rocket, and we were still living in Birmingham. And I thought our house was bombed. In fact, we didn't know until later that people used to tell us, they said, you got somebody in front of your house with a rifle. But we were living in the parsonage then. That's where they bought a house for us so we could live there, when we first moved to Birmingham. And he said he heard on his walkie-talkie and said, get that nigga Cross X. Did I tell you about Dr. King and them coming to the our home after the church was bombed?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. After the church was bombed, my mother dad didn't let us stay at home that night, because they knew that the phone was going to be constantly ringing. And so we stayed at our neighbor's house. And my mother said people called all night long and said some white people were calling and said, we don't all think like that. But
Wow.
But when I went to the door, there was Ralph David Abernathy. Did I say that yet?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So the day after, but we were expected to go to school like nothing had happened. I guess our parents didn't want us to be worried and stuff like that, and when I sent us to school. But when I came home, after I had spent the night with a neighbor, the doorbell rang. There was Ralph David Abernathy, Martin Luther King Jr., Dick Gregory, and A.D. Williams King, which was Dr. King's brother. And what they wanted, and my friend said, did you talk to them? I said, no, because they came to talk to my parents. So what they were going to do is go pay their respect to all of the 4 families, and the one that was hospitalized, which was who lost her eye. So they went to see all of the families, the 4 girls that died, and then they paid their respects to not Adam A. Collins. Which one was that? The one that lost her eye. My memory's gone.
That's all right.
Sarah Collins was one that lost her eye. I got a chance to go with my dad when he went to pay his respects to Mrs. McNair. I'll never forget that. Mrs. McNair had the saddest look on her face. And then he went to see the others. He paid his respects to the families that lost the girls. Even though I cry a lot when I talk about it, I'm glad that I was there that day. And so when people say, Ms. Cross, do you hate the bomber? I said, no, I hate what they did. But I'm glad that I can share the memories of the girls. And so when I go to school, I talk about when I get invited to speak. Like I said, I've been on Oprah, been on Montel. And but if you ever, like I said, visit the church, it's a beautiful sanctuary.
Yes, it is.
And I'll never forget what happened there. And I thank God for the memories. I did tell you that A.G. Gaston let us use his business college.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So when we couldn't have church anymore, there A.G. Gaston was a Black millionaire. He had a supper club. He would smoke cigars, and he had a business college, which was right down the street from 16th Street, because we couldn't hold church in there anymore. So at no cost, he let us use his auditorium. So we would have service there for about 18 months until they restored the church.
Wow.
And when they restored the church, we had a re-entry service, and I think we marched back to the church. Yes. So I think that was monumental to help people forget. But for the families who lost their girls, like I said, one of the families, she couldn't take 4 caskets, so Ms. Robinson had a separate funeral, and
Absolutely.
I was one of the flower girls, the ones who were my age, who were there in church. Some of us, we stood on the outside of the church and formed like a line on both sides, and there were so many people there in the church, but Ms. Robinson Mrs. Robinson didn't want to have like that type of atmosphere. But like I said, I remember that my dad yielded to Dr. King and let him do the eulogy. So, and he was one of the ones who had officiated with the church at 6th Avenue. Like I said, was built on almost the same architect style as 16th Street.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an amazing story. Bettina, you had a question for Ms. Cross?
Yes, Ms. Cross. I just have to say this. In this Women's History Month, first of all, it is an honor to talk to you at any point. Okay. So when I listened to you a few weeks ago when you did, it was a session that you did, and Vanessa and I had the honor of sitting and listening to you speak. You speak so eloquently. And the thing that stood out so much for me is the fact that your father reared you to forgive. You know, I know that he was a reverend. I know he was a pastor of the church. However, and he still continued to push for you to forgive. And I can hear it in your voice. I can hear the hurt. I want to know for you, first of all, I think in this movement where we are right now with Black Lives Matter and things like that, I'm not sure how many schools you have gone to, but I think somebody needs to make sure that you get in almost every elementary school, Black, white, every high school, because your message of love and forgiveness, you don't hate the sin, you hate the sin, you don't hate the sinner. And so your message to get across to a lot of children now, because with the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of people, they are girded up with hate. You know, it's like, and you hear statements like white people always, and it's not all white people, it's not all Black people. And for you to be able to send your message across about forgiveness, I think that is, especially in this time, we're not with COVID, you know, I wouldn't want you running around in people's schools with COVID, but I believe that, I feel that you're a treasure. And I feel like to be able to have you actually here, to share your message, to feel your spirit, I think that Oprah is fine and all of those great things are fine, but these little children that don't watch Oprah, they need to hear you. They need to know who you are. The teenagers, they need to hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Amen.
Thank you. Now, I do talk to school. When I was doing a substitute teacher, and when people knew my history, I've been blessed to go to talk to schools too. And before the COVID, I would actually go in person, but because of COVID, I just, I do it on Zoom or whatever they want me to do, like we're doing now. Yes. But this is so funny. When I was able to go inside the schools before the COVID, and they would hear my history, because a lot of times people would invite me to other schools so the kids could hear me, and I would either talk in the media center. And then at one time I showed a picture from, I think it was either with Spike Lee or one of the other persons that had me, and I played.
Wait a minute, Miss Cross, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
But
There you
I
go.
always told him, I said, my dad was a pastor. We weren't taught to hate. I was brought up in church, and I just knew not to hate. Now this is funny. They go to show you that siblings have different personalities. My sister that was next to me, we're 2 years apart. She was in the Black Power movement.
She was ready to fight.
She had one of them Angela Davis bushes.
Yes, ma'am.
And she said, She said, it couldn't be me. I'd throw a rock. But I was the kind of meek mound and scary like. So, but that goes to show you, do you have different dynamics and personalities in families?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
God had you right where you needed to be.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you need a little Angela Davis.
You do. At least a friend like Angela Davis anyway.
Right.
Absolutely. So that was an amazing interview that we had with Miss Cross. As you can see, her bubbly personality, but the fact that she still is a beautiful lady in spite of going through what she'd been through was just amazing to see. What do you ladies think?
It's absolutely powerful. And just to hear her say she wasn't taught to hate, because, you know, a lot of people weren't taught a lot of things and yet they still turned out to be the opposite. So just to see that she was not taught to hate and she does not hate, and that she does hate the sin, but not the sinner, that's powerful and speaks volumes within itself. So that's a lesson in itself that can be taught to young and old.
Absolutely. Bettina, what do you think?
Well, you know, I was just giddy with even being able to talk to her. I like the fact that she still, even through the hurt, she has a great sense of humor. And the fact that she even mentioned that, you know, her sister was like, power to the people, something needs to be done, you know. And she mentioned that she was meek, mild. The one thing, and she said she would allow us to talk to her again, which I thought was a great offer when we got a chance to talk to her afterwards. I wanted to ask her if she ever had any counseling for PTSD, because she clearly, she clearly has it. I don't know if she, again, has gotten any kind of counseling or any help for PTSD.
That's the same question I wanted to ask yesterday. Of course, we didn't have time, but that's one question I would love, you know, to find out if she's gotten any type of, you know, like you stated, counseling, or, you know, had some form of assistance in dealing with the events that had occurred.
Right.
Absolutely. And to that point, you know, Alexis is saying, you know, she's walking history. She's in my generation, doesn't get that opportunity often to talk to somebody like that. So to the point, I think Bettina was the one who asked the question, you know, talking to schools, helping them to recognize, because this movement, this BLM movement we had this current time, it was a lot of young people.
Right.
You know, and we had to have a conversation with them about not rioting, but protesting, the difference between the two. You know, I'm curious to know, Sonia, what are your thoughts about what you saw with Miss Cross?
I was going to add to what you just said. She even said, even back then, it was a lot of young people because, you know, the parents were afraid for their jobs. So even then, you had a lot of young people protesting, and maybe some were encouraged to do it simply because their parents couldn't get out there and do it. So it's like, yeah, baby, you want to go ahead, you know, go represent the family.
Right.
But what stood out to me as I listened to her is that not very much has changed. And I think somebody may have mentioned this earlier or something. As I say, not very much has changed, I began to ask myself, what are we doing? And when I say we, now I'm talking about believers, because what we have to understand is that the battle is in the spirit. It's in the spirit realm, and we're trying to fight something that should be fought in the spirit, we're trying to fight it in the flesh. And we must always take it back to the word of God. And we have to remember who we are, the power and authority that he has placed on us to do just that. And so it just makes me examine my own heart as it relates to this. What are we doing? Are we praying about the hatred that we're still experiencing today? Anything that's simple that is not of God, how are we dealing with it? Are we out there on the battlefield praying and lamenting on behalf of others and then trying to lead those who are lost to Christ and praying for deliverance for those who are evil? We say that, well, the hatred is there and these people are this way but are we praying for these people? I'll go back to a lot of last 4 years with our past 45. I think that was his number. Anyway, many people didn't want to pray for him, but no, we have to pray for him too. And I'm just going to read this real quick. Luke 10:19. Behold, I give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. And so we have to learn how to stand on the word of God in adversity.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And sometimes we need to be reminded. I often ask my family, what happened during that time. Did they protest? Did they go out and do? And there was a lot of fear going on. You didn't want your kids harmed. If you look at some of the documentaries, they talk about the fact that they used the young people because the charges couldn't stick. Right. So if they put them in jail, the charges wouldn't stick because they were juveniles. Right. So that was a strategy to do, whereas somebody as an adult, they didn't want to protest because if their face was on the screen, they lost their job. Mm-hmm. So you were caught in a catch-22, but I love how Sonia beautifully put it, about praying about it. The former, as I like to call him, Sonia, not 45, he's gone. I like to remind people he's gone. But praying for leaders of our world, whether we agree with them or not, is paramount. Yes. You have to pray that, God gets a chance to get their attention, because changing someone's heart is above our pay grade. We don't have that ability. We can pray for them. We can intercede for them. But as far as changes being made to that heart, that's above us. So we have to pray. We have to take this to God. Vanessa, what are your thoughts?
No, that's true. And, just like Miss Cross was taught not to hate, and she's forgiven the people who bombed, they didn't hit her, or chase her. They bombed a dwelling that she was in. But yet she has learned to forgive, and praying for those who have committed, a transgression against us. That in itself is powerful. Being able to do that genuinely and sincerely, that's powerful. God knew what he was doing when he said to pray, because otherwise we do just the opposite. God knows what he's doing in all things, not just that, but in all things. But he really knew what he was doing when he said to pray, for your enemies. And there's a reason for that, because we can't change our enemies. Only he can do that. And that change comes, prayer changes. So in order to change them, we've got to get on our knees and pray that, the change comes to them. And that's just that's a powerful thing to do. And I commend, those of us, because I've had to do that as well. But those of us who can sincerely pray for our enemies, I think that's extremely powerful and healing, not just to them, but Absolutely. To ourselves.
One of the things, and I know we're getting ready to close out, but the last part of the interview, because of time, we weren't able to air it. She mentioned that there were 2 other boys that were killed that day. Mm-hmm. They were riding their bicycles, and I'd never heard that until I spoke to her. Yeah. And that's why it is important for us, while we have these, like Alexa said, walking history and these treasures walking around with us, that's why it's important for us to make them priority and not an option. To sit down and to learn the history and to get the information from the people who were actually present. It's easy to read stuff in books, and we know very well, all of us, that everything in books is not necessarily accurate, and it is not complete. So
Exactly.
to get that part of the story, I didn't know that. And I just felt, when she said that, I felt chills because I was like, I never heard that. So it was an honor. You ladies, we find people and we get tenacious, and Vanessa was on that phone with this lady back and forth, and Miss Cross was right there with us.
Yes,
What
she
they
was.
didn't see was all of the whatnot we had to do to make sure we get, because as we get more mature, them buttons get real strange. Like, wait a minute, I'm trying to push. Hold on, I think I see it. Give me a second. So the buttons get real extra. The fact that she hung in there and she did not give up. She said, "Nope, I'm gonna hang up. I'll call you back." So Vanessa, you dug in there. Thank you for getting that interview. It was amazing. It was an honor. And we just continue to do this. And I'm going to say this: we continue to do this from way back with the Kitchen Table Radio Show. When Talisa, you remember, you got to interview Dr. Bernice King. We got to interview Dick Gregory. I mean, and like the list goes on. We had so many amazing interviews, and it's because God is smiling on us that we have the opportunity to speak to these people and let their stories be told and let it be heard.
Exactly.
And I'm so glad you said that, Bettina, because we, with technology, have the ability to bring that back. We may do just that, just so you can, because we know we got new people who hear us, who didn't hear us when we were on the radio.
Right.
So we might be able to reach into the archives.
Thank you for that, Tina.
Yes, and pull that out so that you can actually hear the interview. Exactly. Because again, we get a chance to talk with people, and the purpose we want is to bring the conversation to the table. Specifically for our young people, as Alexis said, they don't know anything about that. You ask certain names and they look at you like you have four heads. Like, what? So we will definitely see about pulling that out of the archives. So thank you so much, Miss Bettina, with that one.
Yes.
Miss Sonia, we missed you on the front end. What's thus saith the Lord on the back end?
There we go. I tell you, girl. The back end is good. Romans 12. I want to encourage you guys to read Romans 12, 9 through 21. If you would please read Romans 12, 9 through 21. But I'm only going to read the first verse, 9, verse 9, Romans 12, 9. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil and cling to what is good. I'm going to go on to 10. Be devoted to one another. Honor one another above yourselves.
Wow.
And basically, it speaks for itself. As she told us at the beginning, they were studying a love that forgives. And so this is a love that forgives. It must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. And be devoted to one another in love. That's what we must do in order to overcome situations like this. Like we just said, she says she has forgiveness in her heart for what those people did. And how ironic is it that they would be studying a love that forgives? God had already laid the foundation and prepared them for what was coming. We serve an amazing God, and we give him the glory. And there's some more good stuff in Romans chapter 9, so I encourage y'all to read it. I mean, Romans chapter 12. I encourage y'all to read it.
Absolutely. And the fact that, again, like you said, God knew, even when we didn't know, we prefer not to go through it. That's the problem. We don't want to go through it. And he's like, no, I got you through it. I'm with you in it. And we're going to be all right. So I appreciate her. We definitely appreciate her for being on the show. We appreciate all of you ladies. And thank you so much. And if you notice, we're scrolling at the bottom of the screen. We are normally on from 2 to 3. Today was an oddball because we had some technology issues, but we wanted to make sure you got the whole show. So we came back at 3:00 just so you could get it. But check us out in 2 weeks on the 27th. We will be back with our new show, and it just might be Bernie and have her on our show so that you can hear what happened on the Kitchen Table Radio Show with Miss Bernice King. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks at 2:00, and we say bye. We love you. Ladies, say bye, and we'll see them when we come back.
I don't say bye. I say see you later. See you later, and God bless you.
Okay. See you later. As you can see, the Reverend Mother here has something to say. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Get ready for Sonia, Talisa, Vanessa, Bettina. Come on. Say what? Come on. Say what? We got hot topics. We got what the fudge. So bring it home. Say what? wanna cheat, you wanna chat, you wanna talk about this and talk about that. You're in the right place to hear the facts. Bring it home. Say what? Bring it home. Say what? The ladies are bringing the conversation. So join us on Say What across the nation. Bring it on, y'all. Say